For Chapter 13 from Sociology 3392, Qualitative Data Analysis. So qualitative data analysis is the non-numerical examination and interpretation of observations for the purpose of discovering underlying meanings and patterns of relationships. So again, qualitative is words, quantitative is numbers. So there's a few different things that we do when we're analyzing qualitative data. A cross-case analysis is looking for patterns in more than one case. This is probably what you're going to be doing if you chose to do qualitative interviews for your final project. We have a variable-oriented analysis, so looking for relationships among variables. You're probably not going to be using this. And then case-oriented analysis. So an attempt to fully understand one or several cases. Again, you're probably not going to use a case study, so what you're going to be focusing is probably going to be on the cross-case analysis. Okay, so we've talked about grounded theory a couple times. It is up to you whether or not you want to use grounded theory in your analysis of your qualitative data. If you choose to do so, that's great. If you want to, attempt it, it's, a little bit tricky, but if you want to attempt it, that's great. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Just make sure you mention in your data and method section if you're going to use grounded theory or not. So again, grounded theory is an inductive approach to research in which theories are generated solely from an examination of data rather than being derived deductively. So again, you're starting with your data collection, your coding, you're sort of coming up with some theories and then going back, collecting maybe a little bit more data. So the constant comparative method, we use this when we're using grounded theory, in which observations are compared with one another and with evolving inductive theory. So again, if you choose to do this, that's great. It's a little bit complicated, but I would love to see you try if you want to. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the steps to analyzing your qualitative interviews. So there's definitely going to be some questions on the exam, but this is going to be specifically useful if you're doing qualitative interviews for your final project. So the first step is to make a transcription, so a written document of the interview. So when you're doing your interview, it's probably best to do it over Zoom. Make sure you're getting permission, informed consent to be recording the the participant. So here are some directions for for how to record a Zoom interview. It's really easy. Just here on the right hand side on the white is how to record during Zoom. I would highly suggest to do this. You can also record it on your phone, but it's really easy to do it straight from Zoom. So once you have recorded, save the recording and transcribe it. So you can transcribe things by hand, but that's very, very difficult. It's just very, very time consuming. It's very, very time consuming. But Zoom can transcribe your interview for you, which is awesome. So again, here's the directions for making that transcript. You can also do it using YouTube. I do it using YouTube sometimes. Again, don't do it by hand. If all else fails, you might have to, but it's just very, very time consuming. So once you have your transcriptions, then delete the original copies of your interview. So you're not, making any sort of, I know you're not going through the IRB, but the IRB will want you to delete those recordings once they are transcribed and de-identify. De-identifying just means taking people's identifying information out of that written copy. Okay, so once you have all your written copies of your interviews, it is time to code. So coding is next. There's a few different sort of levels of coding that I'm going to, go into detail about. First is your open coding. This is your very initial classification and labeling of concepts. Your axial coding is reanalyzing the results of open coding and sort of identifying the really important or general concepts. Then finally, selective coding. So this builds on the results of open coding and axial coding to identify the central concept of your research. Okay, first, open coding. So this is classifying or categorizing individual pieces of data coupled with some kind of retrieval system. So There's different, computer software that you may want to buy, maybe Atlas, or maybe there's a few of them that you can do open coding, and it saves all your codes and little lists. It's really easy to use, or NVivo. I use NVivo sometimes. It's very expensive, but you might be able to find a free trial online. So usually it's only like for, a week or 10 days. So make sure you have all your interviews before you try to get that free trial. And then, download that free trial and try to get everything done before, it charges you. So if you can find a free trial of something, that's great. If not, you can totally code this by hand. I code by hand all the time. I just use, different colors. Either, you could print things out and use different color highlighters to code things, or you can do it on Word and just use a different color highlighted text. That's what I do. It's easy. So again, you're just going to code for different, themes that you're finding in your data. So maybe, you're coding, let's say the last, qualitative project I did was on delinquency in schools. So I'm going through and maybe I see a principal talking about bullying. I will just highlight that as bullying and then, say that, okay, red highlight means, that's a case of bullying. And then on and on. Maybe I'll see substance use. Maybe I'll see, skipping school, whatever I'm finding in my things. Just make sure you have a different color highlight for each theme or code that you find. Okay, memoing. So writing memos can be really useful in your data analysis. It's especially useful if you're using grounded theory. All you do is basically write memos on the sides of your interviews. Again, if you're using a software, there's definitely software that does memoing for you, that keeps it all easily accessible. Again, you can do it by hand. I usually do it by hand. And you can just, write little notes about anything you want. Methodological issues helps with, theoretical formation, maybe defining concepts. So you might have, code notes. So what do these codes mean in clear language? So maybe if my code is, bullying, maybe I'm going to say that this bullying is, verbal bullying and, in person and not cyberbullying. Theoretical notes tend to look at sort of the deeper meanings and relationships. Operational notes tend to focus on the methodological issues. Okay. So next, thematic analysis. So this is where you open all your open codes and develop your themes. So Axio coding is when you're, maybe taking these codes and, looking at these codes and saying that they belong under, a larger theme. So for example, my codes are verbal bullying, cyberbullying, skipping school, substance use in school. Well, maybe my larger theme is going to be school delinquency. Maybe again, my codes are going to be, unsupervision, large class sizes, teacher turnover, and maybe my theme is going to be, potential risk factors for school delinquency. And then once you have all your themes, you're going to kind of identify the central concept or theory. So personally for my, this project that I did, my sort of main concept was that after, people came back to school after the COVID lockdowns, there was a lot less, supervision in school, a lot less, school attachment. The school climate was not very good, and it, influenced delinquency in schools. So I'd say my main central concept of that project was after kids came back from the COVID lockdowns, delinquency in schools was worse. Okay, something that might be helpful for you when you're analyzing your interviews is concept mapping. This is a graphic display of concepts and their interrelations. So this is really useful, especially if you're going to sort of formulate a theory. So just, taking all your codes and themes and sort of linking them together to sort of see where everything fits with each other and sort of the relationships there. Okay, so finally, after you're done, doing your results, you're going to evaluate the quality of your research. So validity, so how credible are your findings? How well does the evaluation address its original aims and purpose? How defensible is the research design? So what you're going to be doing for your final project is looking for, potential problems with validity. Additionally, reliability. So this is not going to be a concern necessarily for you because you're not going to have more than one researcher. But if you do have more than one researcher, you want to see, okay, did all our researchers kind of have the same findings or were they wildly different?